My name is Sienna Brooks, and I turned 25 the week my family decided I did not exist. I was born with a twin, Avery Brooks, and from the beginning Monica Brooks treated us like we came with labels. Avery Brooks was the bright one, the easy one, the one to show off. I was the quiet one, the extra, the problem to manage. People always said, twins are close, but in my house, being a twin meant watching someone else get chosen again and again. The only person who never made me feel like an inconvenience was my grandmother, Vivian Hartwell. She was the one who remembered my favorite tea, the one who asked about my day, the one who looked at me like I mattered. When I moved into my own small apartment, she still called, and she still said she was proud of me. Then one morning, the hospital called. Vivian Hartwell had a stroke, and she was in a coma. Monica Brooks reacted like she was inconvenienced, not scared. She asked what hospital, then asked what the doctors said about recovery, then asked something that made my stomach turn. She asked if Vivian Hartwell ever updated her will. Avery Brooks spoke on speakerphone, voice sharp, saying we should be realistic, and we should protect the family assets. I sat there holding my own phone, breathing slowly, feeling anger rise, then settle into a cold focus. I went to the hospital that afternoon because Vivian Hartwell would have wanted someone there. Monica Brooks did not come. Avery Brooks did not come. It was just me. A quiet room, machines humming, and my grandmother lying still under thin blankets. I talked to her anyway. I told her about my job, about the rain outside, about how I would be back tomorrow. I kept my promise. I came every day, and I sat with her, and I spoke softly, because I could not stand the idea of her being alone. A few days later, Monica Brooks called me with a strange sweetness. She said Avery Brooks' birthday was coming, and she wanted the whole family together. I asked if we could schedule it around hospital visits. Monica Brooks laughed once, and the laugh felt cruel. She said the party was for Avery Brooks, not for Vivian Hartwell, and she said I should stay home. She said no one wants you there, Sienna. She said, do not make it awkward. I held the phone away from my ear for a second. Like distance could make it hurt less. Then I asked her why she was doing this. Monica Brooks sighed and said I always make everything about me. I hung up, staring at the wall, realizing something hard and simple. They did not just prefer Avery Brooks, they needed me small, because it made their story easier. And that was the week I learned what they were willing to do to keep that story intact. The morning of Avery Brooks' birthday. My apartment felt too quiet, and my phone stayed silent. I went to the hospital early, sat by Vivian Hartwell's bed, and spoke like she could hear me. I told her Monica Brooks said I should stay home, and I told her I did not understand why love had to be earned. When visiting hours ended, I drove back and tried to focus on normal life. Then a delivery arrived at my door, a neat box with a ribbon and a small card. The card said Sienna Brooks, "Sorry you could not come. At least do not feel left out." It was signed by Avery Brooks, with a heart drawn at the end. Inside the box were cupcakes, beautifully frosted, and a label taped on top that said nut-free. My throat tightened, because everyone in my family knows my allergy. They have seen me break out. They have seen my breathing turn shallow. They have seen how fast it can get dangerous. The label looked deliberate, like someone wanted me to trust it. I hesitated, then I told myself maybe this was a rare moment of kindness. I ate half of one cupcake, and within minutes my body told me the truth. My lips tingled, my skin flushed hot, and my chest started to tighten like a belt. I stood up too fast, dizzy, reaching for my inhaler with shaking hands. My throat began to swell, and each breath sounded smaller than the one before. Panic surged, but I forced myself to move with purpose. I grabbed my epinephrine pen, pressed it into my leg, and called emergency services with a voice that barely worked. While I waited, I tried to stay upright, because lying down felt like surrender. My vision blurred at the edges, and my hands went numb. Then my phone buzzed with an incoming call, and the name on the screen made my stomach drop. It was Avery Brooks. I could not speak, but I answered on instinct. Avery Brooks' voice was calm, almost bored. She asked if I liked the cupcakes, then she said, "Do not make a scene. You always overreact." She said she already called dispatch earlier and told them I have anxiety, so they might not rush. I tried to inhale, and the sound came out like a broken whistle. Avery Brooks sighed and said, "You should stay home like Monica Brooks told you." Then she hung up. I stared at the phone, and something inside me went cold. This was not an accident, and it was not thoughtless. It was planned. The sirens finally reached my street, but the minutes felt endless. When the paramedics burst in, I could barely point to my mouth and throat. One of them, Ethan Rivera, moved fast, checking my airway, asking clear questions, reading my face like a map. I heard him say anaphylaxis, and I heard urgency in his voice. As they lifted me onto the stretcher, I realized I could have died alone in my apartment, while my family celebrated upstairs in a fancy venue. And I realized Avery Brooks did not just want me excluded. She wanted me quiet, permanently. I woke up under bright hospital lights, and my throat still felt raw. My body was heavy, like it had run a marathon, and my hands would not stop trembling. A nurse told me I was lucky, because anaphylaxis can turn deadly fast. I stared at the ceiling, trying to process one fact. My own twin called ahead to slow help. Ethan Rivera came in a little later, still in uniform, calm and focused. He asked if I could breathe comfortably now. Then he asked what I ate. I told him about the cupcakes, the label that said nut-free, and the call from Avery Brooks. Ethan Rivera's eyes narrowed, not with drama, with concern. He said he has seen accidents, and he has seen intent, and this sounded like intent. He asked if I still had the box. I said it was at my apartment, on the counter, exactly where it landed. Ethan Rivera said, "Do not throw anything away, and do not clean it up." He told me to ask the hospital to document everything, symptoms, treatment, timing, and any statements I received. He said medical records matter when someone tries to rewrite the truth later. I nodded, because my family loves rewriting. When I could finally sit up, I called the hospital desk at Vivian Hartwell Wing. I asked if anything changed, and the nurse said she was still in a coma. I felt tears rise because my grandmother was unconscious, and I was almost dead. Monica Brooks and Avery Brooks were still at a party, pretending I was the problem. Ethan Rivera asked if my family was coming to see me. I laughed once, bitter and small. I told him, Monica Brooks told me to stay home, and Avery Brooks sent the cupcake. Ethan Rivera sat on the edge of the chair and said, "Then we treat this like a crime scene, not a misunderstanding." Before he left, he gave me his card, and he told me to call if anyone pressures me. He said people who cause harm often come back fast, to control the story. He was right. My phone filled with messages from Monica Brooks, not asking if I was alive, asking if I was making drama. She said the cupcakes were a sweet gesture, and I should stop accusing Avery Brooks. I did not answer. I saved the messages, then I turned my phone off. In the quiet, I felt something change inside me. Fear was still there, but it was no longer in charge. I decided that if Avery Brooks planned this, I would prove it. And if Monica Brooks helped her, I would prove that too. The next afternoon, as I packed to leave the hospital, a call came through from an unknown number. The voice on the line was measured, older, and professional. He introduced himself as Mr. Callahan, and he said he represented Vivian Hartwell. He asked if I was Sienna Brooks, and when I said yes, he paused like he chose his next words carefully. He said he heard about the incident with the cupcakes, and he said he was glad I survived. He also said Vivian Hartwell had anticipated conflict in the family, and she left instructions for him. He said, "If anything happens to Sienna Brooks, contact her immediately, and do not trust Monica Brooks." My stomach dropped because my grandmother knew. Mr. Callahan asked if I could meet him at the hospital, in a public area, because he wanted to give me information safely. I agreed, and Ethan Rivera offered to drive me, because he did not like the idea of me being alone. At the hospital lobby, Mr. Callahan handed me a sealed folder, and he told me not to open it in front of anyone. He said Vivian Hartwell updated her estate plan recently, and she did it quietly. He said he could not finalize anything while she was incapacitated, but he could tell me one thing. Vivian Hartwell wanted Sienna Brooks protected, and she wanted her assets kept away from anyone who would exploit them. Mr. Callahan said he had seen families turn vicious around money, and he said this situation felt dangerous. He asked if I felt safe going back to my apartment. I told him Avery Brooks had my address, and Monica Brooks knew my schedule, and I did not feel safe. Mr. Callahan suggested I stay with a friend, and he suggested I document every contact from Monica Brooks and Avery Brooks. He said, if the cupcakes were tampered with, there could be legal consequences, and evidence would matter. Ethan Rivera listened quietly, then asked if the delivery company had records. Mr. Callahan nodded, and he said yes, and he could request them properly. Before we parted, Mr. Callahan said one more thing, and his voice turned firm. He said, do not attend any meeting alone, and do not accept any apology without proof. I walked out of the lobby feeling dizzy, because the story was larger than a party. It was about inheritance and control, and eliminating the person who stood in the way. I looked at Ethan Rivera and said, I need help finding proof. He said then, we start now. I did not go back to my apartment that night. I went to a small hotel near the hospital. Ethan Rivera insisted on walking me to the door. Then he left only after I promised to lock it. In the morning, I met him and Mr. Callahan again, and they introduced me to Logan Price. Logan Price was a digital forensics specialist, calm, precise, and not easily shocked. He said, people leave trails, even when they think they are careful. He asked if I still had the delivery photos, the card, and the call log from Avery Brooks. I showed him everything. He took notes, then asked one simple question. Did Avery Brooks ever text about your allergy? I said yes, because she has mocked it before. Logan Price asked for my permission to preserve my phone data, and I agreed. He created a secure backup, then he searched for key phrases, nuts, almond, label, cupcake, and ambulance. Within minutes, his face changed slightly, the way someone looks when the pattern becomes clear. He found a message thread between Avery Brooks and Monica Brooks from the day before the delivery. It described a special flower, it described swapping labels, and it described calling dispatch first to frame me as dramatic. Logan Price did not celebrate. He simply said, this is planning. Ethan Rivera exhaled slowly, like he had been waiting for confirmation. Mr. Callahan asked Logan Price to preserve everything with proper chain of custody, because this would matter later. My hands shook as I stared at the screen, because seeing it in writing was different than feeling it in my bones. Avery Brooks did not accidentally poison me. She coordinated it. Monica Brooks did not accidentally enable her. She advised her. I asked Logan Price if there were cameras near my apartment. He said there might be hallway footage or doorbell cameras, and he could request it through the right channels. Ethan Rivera said he could also speak to the responding crew to document the strange pre-call warning. Mr. Callahan told me to breathe, because shock can drown you even after you survive. I tried, but anger kept rising. They told me to stay home, and they tried to make sure I never left it again. I looked at the saved messages, and I felt my fear turn into a hard decision. I would not let them bury this, and I would not let them touch Vivian Hartwell money. If they wanted a war, they had already started it. I was simply going to finish it with truth. Logan Price worked like he was assembling a clean map, and every detail mattered. He told me to stop thinking like a daughter and start thinking like a witness. We returned to my apartment in daylight, with Ethan Rivera nearby, and my hands still shaking. I did not touch the cupcake box at first. I photographed it from every angle. I photographed the label that said nut-free and the ingredient list that looked too perfect. I photographed the card Avery Brooks signed and the ribbon she used like a gift wrap on a weapon. Logan Price wore gloves, and he sealed the packaging carefully because he said evidence must stay uncontaminated. He also asked the building manager about hallway cameras, and the manager said there was footage for deliveries. Logan Price requested the clip properly, and he logged the time window. When the video arrived, it showed a delivery driver placing the box. Then it showed someone else approaching later. The person wore a hat and moved fast, but the posture felt familiar. Logan Price zoomed in, and the shoes matched a photo Avery Brooks posted online that week. Ethan Rivera exhaled, slow and sharp, because the pattern was tightening. I felt my stomach turn, because it meant the label swap was not only planned in text, it was carried out in the hallway, at my door, like I was being hunted. Ethan Rivera asked if the dispatch call could be documented. He contacted his supervisor and requested the incident notes from the responding team. The notes included a strange detail. A caller warned dispatch that I exaggerate and might be anxious. The call time was earlier than my emergency call, and it matched what Avery Brooks bragged about on the phone. Logan Price printed the timeline, and Mr. Callahan reviewed it with a calm face. He said this is no longer family drama. This is attempted harm, and it intersects with inheritance concerns. My chest tightened when he said inheritance, because I finally understood the motive. Monica Brooks and Avery Brooks were not only cruel, they were strategic. They were trying to remove me from the board before Vivian Hartwell woke up. That night, I did not cry. I organized. I backed up files. I saved screenshots, and I wrote down every date. I also wrote one sentence at the top of my notes. I survived. And now I speak. Mr. Callahan told me there would be a family meeting at the hospital, and he wanted it on record. He said Monica Brooks and Avery Brooks were asking questions about Vivian Hartwell estate, and they were pushing for paperwork while she was still unconscious. He said he would not allow anything improper, and he wanted witnesses present. We met in a small conference room near the intensive care unit, with neutral walls and bad coffee. Monica Brooks arrived first, dressed like a woman going to a charity event, not a hospital. Avery Brooks followed, smiling faintly, like she expected control. When they saw me, their faces shifted, because they did not expect me alive, standing, and calm. Monica Brooks asked why I was there, and she said I should be resting. I said I am resting after I hear the truth. Avery Brooks tilted her head and said I always make scenes, like she was still trying to plant the story. Ethan Rivera stood near the door, quiet and steady. Logan Price sat with a folder, and Mr. Callahan opened the meeting with a firm tone. He said, Vivian Hartwell is incapacitated, and no one will access her assets through pressure or manipulation. Monica Brooks tried to protest, saying she is family, and she deserves clarity. Mr. Callahan said clarity does not belong to the loudest person. Avery Brooks asked if there was a will, and her voice sharpened on the word will. Mr. Callahan said there is an estate plan, and it will be handled lawfully. Monica Brooks said I should not be involved, because I am unstable. I asked her if unstable people can survive anaphylaxis alone, then document it, then bring evidence. Monica Brooks blinked, and her mouth tightened. Avery Brooks laughed softly and said cupcakes do not almost kill people. Logan Price slid a printed screenshot across the table, showing the message thread about almond flour, label swapping, and calling dispatch first. The room went silent, and the silence felt heavy. Monica Brooks stared at the paper, then said it is fake. Logan Price said it is preserved with forensic methods, and it matches device metadata. Avery Brooks' face drained, then she tried anger, then she tried tears, and neither one worked. Mr. Callahan said the hospital security and dispatch notes have also been preserved. He said, if they continue harassing Sienna Brooks, he will cooperate with law enforcement. Monica Brooks stood up, shaking, and said, this is a misunderstanding. I said, misunderstanding is an accident. Planning is a choice. Then I left the room, because I did not need to argue anymore. The proof had already spoken. I went back to Vivian Hartwell's room after the meeting, and I sat beside her bed. The machines hummed softly, and the light from the window looked pale. I told her I was still here, and I told her I would keep her safe, the way she kept me safe. My voice was steady, but my hands were cold. Ethan Rivera waited outside the room, giving me space, but ready if I needed support. An hour later, the nurse came in to check vitals, and she paused, staring at the monitor. She asked me to step back for a moment, and she called the doctor. Vivian Hartwell's fingers moved slightly. Then her eyelids fluttered. I leaned forward, holding my breath, and she opened her eyes halfway. The doctor asked simple questions, and Vivian Hartwell answered with small movements and a rough whisper. She looked at me, and her eyes focused like she was fighting through fog. I said, it is me, Sienna Brooks. I am here. A tear slid down her cheek, and she squeezed my hand with weak strength. In that moment, grief turned into relief, sharp and overwhelming. Mr. Callahan arrived quickly when he heard the update, and he stood near the door, respectful and alert. Monica Brooks and Avery Brooks appeared in the hallway soon after, drawn by the news like a scent. Monica Brooks tried to push into the room, but staff stopped her because Vivian Hartwell needed calm. Avery Brooks stood behind her, face tight, watching me like she was calculating. Vivian Hartwell looked toward the doorway, and her expression changed. Even weak, she recognized danger. When the doctor stepped out, Mr. Callahan spoke softly to Vivian Hartwell, explaining that there had been concerns and that Sienna Brooks was nearly harmed. Vivian Hartwell's eyes widened, then narrowed with anger. She whispered Monica, and her voice sounded like steel under strain. The nurse asked if she wanted visitors, and Vivian Hartwell shook her head, then pointed at me again. It was clear. She wanted me, not them. Monica Brooks began crying in the hallway, loud enough for attention, but Vivian Hartwell did not react. Avery Brooks stared at the closed door, and for the first time, she looked afraid. I sat by the bed, feeling Vivian Hartwell grip tighten again, and I understood the shift. The woman they tried to silence had survived, and the woman they wanted to control had woken up. Their story was ending, and mine was finally beginning. Vivian Hartwell was weak, but her mind returned in clear flashes. The doctors said recovery would be slow, and calm mattered more than conversation. I sat with her each day, holding her hand, reading softly, and watching her eyes follow the room. Mr. Callahan visited with careful steps, speaking in short phrases, so she could save strength. One afternoon, Vivian Hartwell squeezed my fingers twice, then pointed toward her bedside drawer. I opened it slowly, and found a small notebook, and a key taped inside. Vivian Hartwell tried to speak, and her voice came out rough but steady. She said safe box, then she nodded toward Mr. Callahan. Mr. Callahan understood immediately, and he said he would handle it by procedure. In the hallway, Monica Brooks kept trying to control the narrative. She cried to nurses, she pleaded with staff, and she told anyone who listened that Sienna Brooks was unstable. Avery Brooks stayed close, quiet and watchful, like she was waiting for an opening. Ethan Rivera told me the hospital documented their behavior because it kept escalating. He said people who feel power slipping often get louder. Vivian Hartwell saw them once through the door window, and her expression hardened. She lifted her hand weakly, then made a small pushing motion, like she was refusing them. Mr. Callahan returned later with a sealed envelope, and he told me he accessed the safe deposit box under emergency protocol. He said Vivian Hartwell updated her estate plan recently, and she also wrote a letter in her own handwriting. He said the letter was for Sienna Brooks, and it explained why she changed everything. Vivian Hartwell looked at me, and tears gathered in the corners of her eyes. She whispered, "You were there," and my throat tightened. I told her I stayed because she loved me. And love is not a bargain. Vivian Hartwell squeezed my hand again, then closed her eyes, exhausted. Outside, Monica Brooks demanded to know what was in the envelope, and Mr. Callahan told her nothing because Vivian Hartwell was the client. Avery Brooks tried to step closer, and Ethan Rivera shifted, blocking the path without touching anyone. It was a small movement, but it meant safety. I realized then that this was not finished. Evidence had cracked their mask, but greed makes people persistent. Vivian Hartwell had woken up, and she was choosing sides. Monica Brooks and Avery Brooks did not like the side she chose. The next day, Monica Brooks shifted tactics and aimed at my reputation. She called relatives, called old friends, and told them I was unstable. I learned this when my phone lit up non-stop with unfamiliar numbers. A cousin asked if I was okay, but suspicion hid in the tone. An aunt asked why I would accuse Avery Brooks of poisoning, like it was absurd. I kept my answers short because long explanations invite twisting. I said I had medical records, digital proof, and hospital documentation. Some people went quiet after that, and some doubled down because denial is easier. Avery Brooks messaged me from a new account with fake sweetness first. She wrote that I was ruining the family and exploiting Vivian Hartwell's sickness. My hands shook, but I did not respond. And Logan Price saved it with timestamps. Ethan Rivera checked on me because stress showed on my face, and he reminded me to eat. I hated that strangers offered more care than my own mother ever did. Mr. Callahan requested a formal meeting once Vivian Hartwell was stable enough. He said it would be at the hospital with witnesses and security nearby. Monica Brooks and Avery Brooks agreed quickly because they believed they could spin. The day of the meeting, Monica Brooks arrived, dressed perfectly, eyes red on purpose. Avery Brooks came in a soft sweater, acting innocent, like she forgot my ambulance. They greeted me like nothing happened, like I should accept the rewrite. Mr. Callahan opened with facts, not feelings, and referenced the message thread. Monica Brooks claimed the screenshots were fabricated and blamed Logan Price for manipulation. Logan Price explained chain of custody, device metadata, and preservation, calmly and clearly. Avery Brooks tried to laugh, then tried to cry, then called it a joke. Ethan Rivera asked how poisoning is a joke, and Avery Brooks snapped that I overreact. Mr. Callahan slid dispatch notes across the table, showing a warning call before mine. Monica Brooks tried blaming anxiety again, so I placed my discharge summary down. The paper showed anaphylaxis, timing and treatment, and excuses had nowhere to hide. Monica Brooks reached for Vivian Hartwell letter, and Mr. Callahan pulled it back. He said, Vivian Hartwell wrote it, and it was not for Monica Brooks. Monica Brooks demanded the will, and Avery Brooks leaned forward, accusing me of lying for money. I looked at her and said she tried to erase me for money. Then I stopped. I did not need to win an argument. I needed the truth to stay visible. A few days later, Vivian Hartwell was strong enough for a brief legal session. Her voice was rough, but her eyes were sharp and steady. Mr. Callahan arranged a controlled reading inside a quiet hospital conference room. Staff stayed nearby, and security remained close in the hallway. Monica Brooks arrived early, pacing like movement could change outcomes. Avery Brooks sat beside her, hands folded, acting calm, but her knee bounced. I sat across from them, with Logan Price at my side. Ethan Rivera stood near the door, present and watchful, without saying much. Mr. Callahan began by stating the basics. Vivian Hartwell updated her estate plan recently. He said the documents were signed properly, witnessed properly, and filed properly. Monica Brooks tried to interrupt, claiming Vivian Hartwell was manipulated. Vivian Hartwell lifted her weak hand, and Mr. Callahan paused at once. Vivian Hartwell looked straight at Monica Brooks and whispered, "Stop." The room went silent, because even a whisper can carry authority. Mr. Callahan continued, reading key provisions in clear order. Vivian Hartwell left her home and the majority of her financial assets to Sienna Brooks. She also set aside a protected amount for her medical care and a charitable gift she planned for years. Monica Brooks' face drained and her mouth tightened into a hard line. Avery Brooks stared, as if waiting for a twist that never arrived. Mr. Callahan then read a personal letter written by Vivian Hartwell for Sienna Brooks. Vivian Hartwell wrote that Sienna Brooks was the only one who showed up, daily, consistently. She wrote that Sienna Brooks treated her like a person, not a prize to win. She wrote that Monica Brooks and Avery Brooks proved by their actions they could not be trusted. She wrote she feared they would harm Sienna Brooks to protect access to money. Monica Brooks erupted, saying this is unfair, and she is the daughter. Vivian Hartwell turned her head slowly and stared at her with years in her eyes. She whispered, "You chose money over me." Avery Brooks tried to speak, but her voice cracked and failed. She said she did not mean to hurt anyone, and Vivian Hartwell whispered, "You almost killed her." The air changed, because the truth was no longer only mine. It came from the woman they tried to silence, and it carried weight. Mr. Callahan ended by outlining next steps and reminding everyone the evidence was preserved. Monica Brooks stood, crying loudly, but no one moved to comfort her. Avery Brooks stayed seated, frozen, because her plan had collapsed in public. I looked at Vivian Hartwell, and she squeezed my hand, weak but certain. In that moment, I felt something I had not felt in my family. Protection. Panitana say. When the reading ended, Monica Brooks rushed into the hallway like she needed an audience. She cried loudly, clutched her chest, and told nurses that Sienna Brooks was stealing from a sick woman. Avery Brooks trailed behind her, pale at first, then sharp when no one offered comfort. Mr. Callahan stepped out calmly and asked hospital security to remain close. Logan Price stayed beside me, holding the evidence folder like a shield. Ethan Rivera watched the crowd, alert and steady. Monica Brooks pointed at me and demanded the documents, saying she deserved them as the daughter. Mr. Callahan answered that Vivian Hartwell was the client, and the client's wishes were not negotiable. Monica Brooks snapped that Vivian Hartwell was confused, and Mr. Callahan said Vivian Hartwell just told you to stop. That line hit the hallway hard, because everyone heard it. Avery Brooks finally spoke, voice sharp, saying Sienna Brooks always plays the victim. Logan Price opened the folder and showed the printed timeline, the messages about almond flour, the label swap, and the early dispatch call. Avery Brooks tried to deny it, then tried to laugh, then tried to blame Monica Brooks. Monica Brooks swore she never told her to do anything, and Logan Price pointed to the thread where Monica Brooks suggested timing. Ethan Rivera asked one question: why call dispatch early unless you wanted delay? Monica Brooks stopped crying instantly, and her face went blank because she had no answer. Security stepped closer, and Monica Brooks lowered her voice. Suddenly polite, she said it was a misunderstanding, and she wanted to speak privately. Mr. Callahan said no private meetings, and any contact must be documented. Avery Brooks muttered that none of this would hold up, and Logan Price said it is already preserved. A nurse walked past and looked at me with sympathy, and I realized how public this had become. Monica Brooks grabbed Avery Brooks' arm and pulled her away, hissing that we would regret this. I did not respond, because their threats had lost power. They wanted me quiet, but they made the truth loud. I walked back to Vivian Hartwell's room and sat beside her bed. Vivian Hartwell's eyes were open, tired but steady, and she squeezed my hand again. In that squeeze, I felt a promise. This time I was not alone, and they could not rewrite what happened. After the reading, Mr. Callahan moved quickly, because he said chaos is when people steal. He filed protective paperwork, arranged safeguards, and requested that Monica Brooks and Avery Brooks have limited access to Vivian Hartwell. The hospital agreed, because staff had seen the hallway behavior, and the risk was documented. Logan Price kept working with quiet precision, securing the delivery footage, preserving it properly, and logging each step. Ethan Rivera wrote a statement about the dispatch notes, and he asked the responding crew to record their observations. My medical records were already sealed in the file, and they spoke clearly without emotion. I felt exhausted, but it was a clean exhaustion, like survival turning into structure. Vivian Hartwell improved slowly, day by day, a stronger grip, clearer focus, fewer confused moments. She asked for water, then for a blanket, then for me, and each request felt like a return. One afternoon she asked me to lean closer, and she spoke in short, rough phrases. She said Monica Brooks and Avery Brooks always wanted more, and they measured love in dollars. She said she watched them smile in public, then sharpen in private whenever money was mentioned. She told me she worried for years, because she saw how they treated Sienna Brooks, like an obstacle. She apologized for not stepping in sooner, and I told her she did step in. I told her she did it every time she called, every time she believed me, every time she showed up. Vivian Hartwell's eyes filled, and she squeezed my hand like she accepted the truth. Outside the room, Monica Brooks tried recruiting extended family, sending messages about betrayal. A few relatives called me with cautious voices, asking what happened. I kept my answers simple, and I offered one option: speak to Mr. Callahan and review the records. Some stopped calling after that, because truth requires effort. Avery Brooks tried contacting me through new accounts, alternating apology and rage. Logan Price saved each message with timestamps and told me not to engage. Ethan Rivera reminded me that closure can be dangerous when someone wants control more than peace. I listened, and I focused on safety. I changed my locks, notified my building, and asked management to watch deliveries closely. I also took time off work because my body needed recovery, not only from anaphylaxis, but from years of being treated as disposable. At night, I lay in bed and listened to my breathing, steady and quiet. The space where fear used to sit began to clear. In that space, I built a plan: protect Vivian Hartwell wishes, cooperate with consequences, and build a life Monica Brooks and Avery Brooks could not touch. After the will reading, the situation stopped being a family argument and started becoming a formal case. Mr. Callahan told me the same thing twice, because he wanted it to sink in. He said, intent plus medical harm changes everything. Ethan Rivera explained how dispatch notes are logged and how early calls are traced. Logan Price prepared a technical summary in plain language, showing timestamps, device, data, and preservation steps. We submitted the packet through the proper channels, and we waited for the system to respond. Monica Brooks tried one more public performance online, posting vague lines about betrayal and a daughter taking advantage of a sick mother. The posts lasted hours before people pushed back because nurses saw the hallway and relatives heard the whisper from Vivian Hartwell. Avery Brooks made it worse by calling it a prank gone wrong, as if a prank requires swapped labels and an early warning to dispatch. Mr. Callahan sent a formal notice telling them to stop contacting Sienna Brooks and to stop interfering with Vivian Hartwell care. The hospital tightened visitor rules because staff were tired of the pressure and the noise. One morning, a detective called me for a statement. He asked me to describe the delivery, the symptoms, the timing, and the call from Avery Brooks. I spoke slowly and factually, because facts do not give a liar room to breathe. He asked if I believed it was intentional, and I said there are written messages describing the plan. The detective paused, then said they would review everything. After the call, my hands shook, then steadied, because I knew this was the right direction. Vivian Hartwell was awake enough to hear the basics, and her eyes flashed with anger and pride at the same time. She whispered, "You stayed," and I told her I learned loyalty from her, not from Monica Brooks. A week later, Mr. Callahan confirmed that legal proceedings were moving forward, and that assets were being secured under Vivian Hartwell's plan. Monica Brooks and Avery Brooks would not be allowed to pressure changes, and they would not gain access through intimidation. I did not feel joy. I felt relief. Relief that truth had weight beyond my voice and beyond their crying. That night, I sat beside Vivian Hartwell's bed and watched her breathe, steady and calm. She whispered home, and I understood she meant safety, not a building. I squeezed her hand and promised we would leave the chaos outside the door. A few days after the detective call, the consequences stopped being theoretical. Logan Price told me there was movement. Because the evidence packet was clean, and because the dispatch notes matched the digital trail. Mr. Callahan asked me to come to the hospital for a short meeting, and he said I should not be alone in any hallway. Ethan Rivera met me at the entrance, steady and quiet, and we walked together. In a small office near the nursing station, a detective explained that they were treating the Cupcake incident as intentional harm, not a misunderstanding. He asked me to confirm my allergy history, and I said everyone in my family has known since childhood. He asked about the label that said nut-free, and I confirmed it was part of what made me trust the box. He asked about the call from Avery Brooks, and I told him the exact words, that I overreact, and that she called dispatch first to slow response. The detective nodded once, and said they had already requested the dispatch recording. Then he said something that made my stomach tighten. Avery Brooks and Monica Brooks would be contacted formally. And if they lied, it would make everything worse. I expected to feel triumphant. But what I felt was exhausted, like my body was still catching up to survival. Outside the office, Monica Brooks appeared at the end of the corridor, walking fast, face arranged into grief. Avery Brooks followed behind her, jaw tight, eyes scanning. They stopped when they saw me with Ethan Rivera and hospital staff nearby, and their confidence flickered. Monica Brooks tried to step closer, hands raised as if she wanted to hug me, and I stepped back without speaking. She said, "Sienna Brooks, please, we can fix this," and her voice trembled on purpose. Mr. Callahan arrived and reminded her that contact was restricted and that everything would be documented. Avery Brooks snapped that this was all going too far, and she said one cupcake should not ruin a life. Ethan Rivera answered calmly, "One cupcake almost ended a life, and he did not raise his voice." Monica Brooks tried tears again, but the hallway did not soften. Nurses walked past with tight expressions, and security stayed close. Vivian Hartwell was still recovering, and the staff had seen enough to know who brought chaos. I returned to Vivian Hartwell's room and sat beside her bed because she was the only person in that building who felt like home. Vivian Hartwell looked at my face and read it even before I spoke. She squeezed my hand, weak but certain, and she whispered, "They chose." I nodded, and I told her I would keep choosing safety. In that moment, I understood the real shift. Monica Brooks and Avery Brooks wanted control. But control is fragile when the truth has witnesses, records, and a survivor who refuses to stay quiet. A week later, Mr. Callahan called me with a careful tone, and he said there was an update. He said investigators brought Monica Brooks and Avery Brooks in for formal questioning. And the pressure changed their behavior fast. Monica Brooks tried to cry first, then tried to blame stress, then tried to say she only wanted to protect the family. The detective did not argue. He asked for timelines. Logan Price had already provided timelines, and timelines do not bend. When investigators placed the message thread in front of Avery Brooks, her face changed. She tried to deny it. Then she tried to say it was a joke. Then she went quiet. The dispatch recording was played, and the early warning call made the room cold. "Mr. Callahan," said the detective, told him one sentence, "your client's story keeps shifting, but the evidence does not." That night, Avery Brooks attempted to message me again from a new account, saying she did not mean it, and that Monica Brooks pushed her. I did not respond. Well, Logan Price saved it, and he said, "Blame shifting is not remorse. It is survival." Ethan Rivera reminded me that I do not need to hear their apologies to be safe. Vivian Hartwell was awake enough to understand the basics, and when I told her there were interviews, she nodded once, slowly. She whispered, "Finally." In that single word, I heard years of waiting. The family that treated me like a problem was now being treated like a risk. The hospital tightened restrictions further because Monica Brooks and Avery Brooks kept pushing boundaries. They tried to visit Vivian Hartwell at odd hours, tried to corner nurses, and tried to demand documents. Security recorded each attempt because the staff were tired of being used as props. Mr. Callahan filed additional protective requests, and he said Vivian Hartwell care plan would not be disrupted by greed. When Vivian Hartwell was strong enough, she signed a clear instruction. Monica Brooks and Avery Brooks were not permitted to visit without supervision. Monica Brooks reacted like she was being abused, not restricted. She called relatives, posted online, and insisted Sienna Brooks stole her mother. But the narrative could not hold because too many people had seen the evidence folder, and too many staff had witnessed the hallway scenes. Logan Price also confirmed the hallway footage showed a person matching Avery Brooks swapping packaging near my door. That detail spread quietly among family members, and silence began to replace denial. Ethan Rivera checked on me often, because stress can trigger delayed reactions after anaphylaxis. He reminded me to take medication as instructed, and to rest, even when my mind wanted to sprint. I tried, because surviving is not only about breathing, it is about staying steady after. Vivian Hartwell held my hand and whispered that she was proud. Hearing pride from her felt different than any compliment I had ever heard. It felt like a shield. When Vivian Hartwell was cleared for a step-down unit, Mr. Callahan began the formal transition plan. He said assets would be secured, the house would be protected, and no one would be allowed to pressure changes while recovery continued. He also asked me to consider moving into Vivian Hartwell home temporarily, because it would be safer than staying alone, where Avery Brooks knew my routine. I agreed, even though it felt strange to accept help. Ethan Rivera helped me pack essentials for my apartment, and he stayed nearby while I changed locks and notified building management again. Logan Price recommended additional camera coverage at the new house, because predators return when they feel desperate. I did not like that word, predators, but it fit. Monica Brooks and Avery Brooks had treated my body like a laver, and my life like a problem to solve. Now I was choosing distance, structure, and protection. On the day Vivian Hartwell was moved, she looked at me and tried to smile. She said home soon, and I promised her yes. Later, in my car, I sat in silence for a long minute, feeling grief and relief tangled together. I did not win a prize. I survived a plan. I did not gain a family. I revealed one. The next chapter would not be loud. It would be careful. It would be built on truth, not on fear. And for the first time, I believed I could live without waiting for the next attack. 2 weeks later, Mr. Callahan called with news that made my hands go cold, then steady. Investigators filed formal charges connected to the Cupcake plan and the early dispatch call. The detective explained it in plain language: intent plus medical harm, supported by texts, video, and records. Logan Price's testimony about preservation mattered because it removed the usual escape route. Monica Brooks tried to claim confusion, and Avery Brooks tried to claim a joke. But jokes do not involve swapped labels and timing notes. Ethan Rivera also provided a written statement about the paramedic response and the unusual pre-call warning. My medical file was added, showing anaphylaxis and emergency treatment. When Mr. Callahan said the word charges, I expected to feel joy, but I felt something else. I felt grief, because it was my own mother and my twin. Grief did not erase reality, it simply sat beside it. Monica Brooks tried to contact me again, through relatives, begging for a private talk. I did not accept because private talks were where she twisted truth. Avery Brooks sent a message saying she was sorry, then immediately blamed Monica Brooks. Logan Price, said remorse, does not arrive with a lawsuit attached to it. Vivian Hartwell was stronger now, sitting up longer, speaking in clearer sentences. When I told her that the case was moving forward, she closed her eyes and exhaled. She said they made their choice, and now they face it. That night I walked through Vivian Hartwell house, checking locks, checking cameras, and checking my own breathing. For years, I lived like an unwanted guest in my own family. Now the law was finally saying, your life has value, and your safety matters. Mr. Callahan told me to prepare for one more hard moment, a hearing where Monica Brooks and Avery Brooks might perform again. He said they would try tears, and they would try blame, and they would try to make me look cruel. I told him I was done playing roles. I would show up with facts, and I would leave with boundaries. Ethan Rivera offered to drive me on the day, and Logan Price offered to be present with the evidence binder. I accepted, because accepting help is also survival. The day of the hearing, the courtroom felt cold and too bright. Monica Brooks arrived in soft colors, eyes red, hands trembling on purpose. Avery Brooks sat beside her, face pale, trying to look small. When they saw me, their expressions flickered, then they settled into performance. Monica Brooks cried about family, about stress, about love. The prosecutor did not argue. He asked about the messages. Logan Price evidence was introduced, with timestamps and metadata. The hallway footage was referenced, showing the delivery, then the later tampering near my door. The dispatch record was played, and the early call sounded chilling in a quiet room. Monica Brooks tried to speak over it, then stopped because the judge demanded order. Avery Brooks tried to claim she did not think it would be serious. Then the medical record was read, showing anaphylaxis, oxygen support, and the timing that nearly ended me. The room went still. Monica Brooks looked toward me and mouthed, "Please," like a request could erase a plan. I did not react, because my reaction was not the point. Accountability was the point. When the judge asked if they understood the severity, Avery Brooks started crying. But her tears came late, after evidence, after exposure, after consequences. Vivian Hartwell was not present in the courtroom, because recovery still mattered, but Mr. Callahan submitted her statement. Her words were clear. She feared for Sienna Brooks' safety, and she wanted her wishes enforced. That statement carried weight because it came from the person they tried to exploit. When the hearing ended, the judge set restrictions: no contact, no interference, no proximity. Monica Brooks stepped into the hallway and tried to collapse into sobs, but no one rushed in. Avery Brooks stared at the floor like it might open. I walked out with Ethan Rivera beside me, and Logan Price behind, holding the file. Outside, the air felt sharp and clean. I did not feel victory. I felt space. Space where fear used to live, and space where my life could finally grow. As weeks passed, Vivian Hartwell regained strength in small, steady steps. She walked with support, then with less support, then with stubborn pride. She spoke more, laughed once, and then cried when she looked at me too long. She said she was sorry I carried this alone for so many years. I told her she was here now, and that was what mattered. Mr. Callahan finalized protections around her assets, and he arranged the legal transfer framework exactly as she intended. He also helped me set up practical safeguards, updated locks, cameras, and a safe routine. Logan Price checked the system once, then reminded me to keep boundaries even when things feel quiet. Ethan Rivera visited occasionally, not as a rescuer, but as someone who cared whether I ate and slept. The case continued moving through the system, and I let Mr. Callahan manage what I could not control. Monica Brooks and Avery Brooks tried fewer tricks as the months passed, because the tricks stopped working. Some relatives apologized quietly, admitting they believed Monica Brooks for years because it was easier. I accepted the apologies that felt real, and I ignored the ones that sounded like fear of association. Vivian Hartwell watched all of it, then said one sentence that settled in my bones. She said, "You do not owe your life to people who tried to take it." One evening, I sat on the porch of her house, holding a warm mug, listening to wind in the trees. I realized my nervous system was changing. I was no longer scanning every sound, no longer waiting for the next cruel message. I was living inside a routine that felt safe. I thought about the words Monica Brooks used: "Stay home. No one wants you there." The irony hit hard. They tried to isolate me, and it pushed me toward the only person who truly loved me. Now, home meant Vivian Hartwell laughter, Mr. Callahan steady protection, Ethan Rivera quiet support, and Logan Price truth that could not be rewritten. I did not get the family I was born into, but I found a life that finally chose me back. Months after the Cupcakes, I finally understood what that command really meant. Monica Brooks told me to stay home because she wanted me isolated, quiet, and easy to erase. Avery Brooks wanted the same thing. She just hid it behind frosting and a fake label. But staying home did not destroy me. It revealed them. Vivian Hartwell recovered enough to sit by her own window again, and she held my hand like an anchor. She told me she watched my family for years, and she saw the hunger behind their smiles. She said she trusted me because I showed up when no reward was offered. Mr. Callahan kept the process clean and lawful, and he never let emotion rewrite records. Logan Price preserved every thread and timestamp, so denial could not hide. Ethan Rivera reminded me that survival is not only breathing, it is rebuilding your nervous system, one calm day at a time. The legal case moved forward, and consequences followed because evidence is heavier than performance. Monica Brooks and Avery Brooks stopped being loud. Once loud stopped working. Some relatives apologized with shame, and some disappeared because truth demands a choice. I stopped chasing anyone. I learned that love is not proven by how much pain you tolerate. It is proven by how safe you feel. Vivian Hartwell home became my home, not because of money, but because it was the first place where my existence was not negotiated. I stopped flinching at unknown numbers, and I stopped bracing for the next trap. I slept through nights without waking up to check locks, and that felt like a miracle. One afternoon, Vivian Hartwell looked at me and said, "You are not the extra twin. You are the daughter I would choose." I did not know how to answer, so I just held her hand and cried quietly. If you are listening, and someone in your life uses guilt as a leash, hear this. You do not owe access to people who harm you, even if they share your blood. You do not owe silence to keep their image intact. Document the truth, protect your body, and accept help when you need it. I used to think family meant enduring anything, because leaving felt like failure. Now I know leaving is sometimes the first act of self-respect. Monica Brooks and Avery Brooks tried to make staying home a punishment, but it became my protection. I stayed home, I survived, and I built a life they could not reach.